Hi, you guys. I am Kokomoko,
And I'm Nikki.
and today we are filming our first ever show, which is Share Your Screen.
And the controversial history of Barbie.
Yeah, and the whole point of our show as well, since this will probably be the first time you're watching, is every week we want to have a presentation where we dive into really detailed, obscure pop culture theories that we have, breaking things down that are trending and why we think they're trending.
Right. And one person made the presentation, which is Coco, for this week. And I know nothing. So It's going to be me reacting, and then we're going to talk about all the things about Barbie and its past.
Here we go. I want to start with the lesson so you kind of know like what we're talking about before we dive into the slides, which is I think that when I was doing the research for this, and it happened because I was doing a completely unrelated video,
Right.
but there was a hyperlink about Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie. So I clicked on that link and I fell down a rabbit hole, and I was going to make a TikTok with you about it, but I was like, this could be its own long-standing series.
Literally.
And there's so much about her. I want to also cite that where I got a lot of information is Mattel's website. There's a really great article on Tablet Magazine. Smithsonian website has a really cool thing on the history of Barbie. And so those are the three main places that I got a lot of these sources. But the overarching theme is that I think you can love a brand or a public figure and really champion them. And they can also make mistakes and be flawed, and you can be critical of them. But those two things can exist at the same time.
Right. I think it's really hard for people to internalize that someone or something like a brand can do a good thing and a bad thing at the same time.
We have to go to the beginning.
Okay.
Which this is a whole... When I Google something, I don't just like skim the first article. I have to fall down a rabbit hole and like be able to write a thesis on it.
It's the ADHD hyperfixation.
I hyperfixated on Mattel. So what's really fascinating, and I grabbed these from like the Mattel's website, but that Mattel started in the 1940s. And I'll get into Ruth Handler because she's interesting in her own right. But she started Mattel with her husband, Elliot, and then their business partner, Harold Matson, but he went by the name Matt. So the name Mattel comes from combining Matt and Elliot.
Oh,
so, Mattel.
I love that.
I know, right? I thought it was interesting that her name wasn't in there because she ends up being a really big part, but neither here nor there. Now, the first big seller was actually a toy ukulele. So they were making kids' instruments when they started.
Interesting.
And so now we're going into the 1950s. And I just, for whatever reason, thought Mattel was mainly Barbie. And like that was their tentpole product.
It's what you think of when someone says Mattel.
Yeah, like I think of Hot Pink. But actually, their first really big seller, which made them enough money to like start investing in things like Barbie, was the Magic 8 Ball.
I love the Magic 8 Ball.
Me too. And I think that shows a little bit about their approach, which even at the time, even now in some ways, but the Magic 8 Ball was like sorcery. Like people were afraid, but it was such a big seller.
It's also kind of a game that like both males and females, like anyone can use it, right? It doesn't really apply to a specific gender. Or it also kind of can like transcend age, you know, like your 8-year-old kid can be playing with it, but then like the dad can pick it up and like shake it and do something with it. You know what I mean?
That's such a good point about Mattel products, I think in general. But I think it also really framed their approach of like, they know that kind of being polarizing is what's going to sell. In my idea, that wasn't quoted anywhere. That's just my own thought on this.
No, I think that is true of like even brands today. Like one brand who I think that does this so well is Crocs. Randomly.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Like I feel like every shoe they have is like, you have to feel some way about it. Like the recent one they did was like this like Croc clogs. It's like a high heel.
Yes.
And I literally saw people on like Instagram and Twitter like raving about it. And people were either like, this is so cute, I love it. Or like, this is the ugliest shoe I've ever seen. Either way, they're getting people to talk about it, which is just free promotion.
You're so right. And it's kind of what you talk about, I think, later in the slides, because I pulled it from your account, but that like counterculture becomes culture.
Yeah.
And I think Crocs for so long was made fun of, but they knew that if they just stuck it out, things that are made fun of end up becoming what's cool.
Right. It's almost like they used being made fun of to their advantage to get people to be the topic of conversation. Like Crocs is constantly a topic of conversation because they're so polarizing.
You're right. That's such a good comparison. And now Mattel also launched a line of toys through the name Fisher-Price.
I had Fisher-Price stuff when I was a kid, and I had no idea it was owned by Mattel.
Right. I didn't know that they were so overarching, but we lead to their flagpole product, which was born in 1959, and that is Barbie, which we're going to talk about on the next slide. The birth of Barbie. Now, this is a very detail-oriented slide, but I think it's my favorite because it's so fascinating. So, in 1950, Ruth Handler noticed that there was a problem where really the only dolls on the market for young girls were babies or toddlers. And she felt like a lot of the toys really indoctrinated young girls into motherhood. So it was like, like play sets for kitchen, like take care of a baby.
I mean, that's, I think, true even today. Like one of the most common like toys for a young girl is like a baby doll.
Yeah.
Which is really like kind of trapping them into this mindset and also of like motherhood and that motherhood is the only option. Yes, exactly. It's exactly what I was about to say.
They
it's like
fire trucks.
It's like honestly like things tied to a career. You know, like
for boys.
Like fire trucks is such a great example, but like women with the kitchen sets or babies or it's so maternal.
Yeah.
And I think it's also like a weird conditioning of children.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of conditioning a child to be like your peak is motherhood.
This is what you should look to.
Yeah.
And so Ruth Handler, way back in the 50s, was really aware of this. She had a daughter named Barbara, which is actually what Barbie is named after. But she noticed that her daughter was not playing with baby dolls, but these like plastic cutouts of what looked like adult like women.
Interesting.
And they were like basically paper almost. And like she wanted her daughter to have like a 3-dimensional toy.
Yeah.
But when she was trying to create this, she was told that one, there's not a market for it because young girls would not want to buy a doll that was older than them. She was told that many times.
That's so funny because also I think kids like always aspire to the big kid. Exactly. You know, like when you're I was a younger sibling. I always remember thinking like my brother's friends were so cool because they were 2 years older than me. You know what I mean? Like kids always aspire to like the big kid.
They want to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she was also told another problem with this was that it would be too expensive to produce because a lot of like the baby doll toys back then were like plush, like there were no hard plastic
I get what you mean. Yeah.
And so that was a problem that she was coming across when she was trying to come up with this idea. So that all changed in 1956. She was traveling in Switzerland and Ruth found a doll that was typically used as an adult toy. It was from this comic called The Build Lily. That's the picture that you see with the pink like jacket. That's not a Barbie doll.
Oh, that's not a Barbie doll? That looks exactly like a Barbie.
I believe that's
you can literally see the inspiration.
The inspiration. Yeah. And so it was based on a German comic and it was actually a doll that, according to Tablet Magazine, people would buy their friends for like bachelor parties. Like it was like an adult toy. Like here's like a girlfriend.
No.
So she had like the boobs, she had like the hair. But Ruth bought this doll and brought it home to base the prototype for Barbie off of.
Fascinating. I mean, literally these two, at least facially, look near identical.
Exactly.
Even the hair.
Yeah. And it wasn't until 1959 that Barbie premiered at the New York Annual Toy Fair. I also think that time frame is really interesting. I think people feel like in order to be successful, maybe because we're in the realm of like influencers, that they feel like there has to be a really quick turnaround. She saw the doll in 56 and it wasn't until 3 years later that she launched it. So, like, you have to take your time when you really want to make something work.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure there was so much preparation. Again, like, if you said that this, like the idea of, like, plastic toys or like, plastic dolls wasn't a thing yet, it's not even a matter of, like, preparing the idea, but it's, like, a lot of logistic planning. Like, can you physically mass produce a doll? A 2-foot plastic girl? Yeah. Or whatever? Like, I don't know, but she has to figure that out.
They had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so what people think about Barbie, of course, is like the blonde hair and the hot pink. Barbie actually came in brunette or blonde. And that was because Ruth herself was brunette. And then the doll is named after her daughter, Barbara. And then Ken would be named after their son, Kenneth. But also the first Barbie was in that black and white chevron bathing suit.
Yep.
So the pink didn't come till later, which we'll get to. Now, a couple other notes is that in the first year, Barbie dolls sold 300,000, which is a lot for back then.
That's so, I mean, honestly, like marketing in the 60s is
A crazy.
Imagine like having to go to a toy fair. Like there is no internet. You're trying to get it, at best, you're getting on the radio.
Yeah.
Like literally, it's insane.
Yeah. So the fact that they sold 300,000 and then the demand was so big that they had to launch Ken in 1961. So Barbie came out in 1959. They launched Ken in 1961 to fill the consumer need because people wanted to start having more around Barbie.
Yeah, this is something we talked about in a TikTok we made, but it is so interesting to me too. And Greta Gerwig talked about this when she was building the Barbie movie of like how in 90% of literature, women are always the accessory to the man, right? Like the man is the breadwinner or the main character, or like think of shows like Mad Men, for example, where they are constantly like idolizing or glamorizing this idea of like the perfect man life, and it's always like this woman at home as like an accessory, you know, taking care of the kids. And it's so fascinating to me that Barbie really feels like the first story where the man is an accessory to the woman. Like Barbie was invented first and everything is Ken. Like if you look at, it's Barbie's house, it's Ken, it's Barbie's car, it's Barbie's accessories. Like Ken is there, but he is never like the protagonist, so to speak. And I think that's a really, really fascinating tale. And also is like kind of, I think, teaching women a bit more about independence. Like, hey, you don't have to be a mother. Like you can be a homeowner. You can own a car. Like I think that is a cool thing that Barbie did.
Yeah, I think that was a huge part of which we'll learn about Ruth's push was she even made it so that we'll talk about this too. But like Barbie never was the one who had a baby. She was always the babysitter, and they did that on purpose. They never wanted women to feel like they had to have kids to like find value. And that was on purpose.
And Barbie was also known for having multiple careers, right? Like that was a whole thing they did. There's reporter Barbie. There's, you know, like president Barbie, astronaut Barbie. Like,
and they created an astronaut Barbie like a decade or more before they ever sent a woman as an astronaut.
Like that's cool to me. And I think that is a very valuable thing to teach young girls. Right? You're playing with something where it's aspiring to something you can do, not something like you have to be a mother.
Totally. So that was the birth of Barbie. And then we'll do the next slide, which will be, okay, Barbie's push forward. So, and these next two slides, we're really going to get into the nitty gritty of really this idea that I think that people sometimes grapple with, which is you can love something and feel like it's progressive, but it can also have its flaws.
Right.
And like, it's not one or the other. They usually coincide. And so a few ways that Barbie pushed forward was that in 1962, they came out with the first dream house for Barbie. One of the reasons that this was seen as a progressive decision was because at that time, women were not typically able to own property without the co-signing of a husband or father. And this was 1962. Women in America were not even able to get their own credit card until 1974.
Wow. Also, this, I think, credit where it's due, gives me some respect for Ruth Handler for being a female entrepreneur in the 40s. Like, can't even own a credit card, but I'm going to start an entire business is very impressive.
And I have a theory on why they made the dream house hot pink in the car. Now, my theory is that after learning about Ruth Handler, the creator, I think they wanted people to subconsciously understand that this was Barbie's house. This was Barbie's car. She's not borrowing it from a husband or a father. And it being hot pink, and of course we can get into the debate of like gender, like socializing and pink and blue, and I agree with that. But I think back then it was a bold statement to make the house pink, to say this is not Ken's house that she's living in.
Yeah.
This is Barbie's house.
Absolutely. I mean, even down to things like the furniture are all pink. Like this is Barbie's couch. It's not Ken's couch.
Exactly.
And I think you're saying it's kind of like this subliminal message of feminism in Barbie, or at the very least a story more rooted in independence, which I think again is just so valuable.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that back then independence was seen as progressive, but like it was.
Yeah.
Now, another way in which they tried to push forward, which is Mattel introduced the Barbie Christie in 1968, and she was the first black doll, and it was seen as them taking a stance in solidarity with the equal rights movement. And this was because, of course, if you know anything about the 60s and what was going on, and there was some pushback against them coming out with a black doll. But they wanted their consumers to feel like they could see themselves in it because not everyone's white. There was some critics who did point out this as performative. Number one, Christie was not an official Barbie. She was just a Mattel
I was thinking
product.
about that too.
And another thing, which we'll get into in the next slide, is it was still a pushing of like European-centric beauty standards because they use, for Christie, they use the same mold that they did for Barbie. So she had what would be perceived as still white features.
Got it.
Yeah, so those were just some, I felt like I should also point out the critiques of this doll as well.
Yeah.
Another way in which they push forward, which Margot Robbie dressed as, which was the Day to Night Barbie in 1985. Barbie is seen in a corporate-looking outfit, which was deemed progressive because at that time, the corporate workforce was still very male-dominated. And then in the autobiography, Ruth said, through the doll, a little girl could be anything she wanted to be.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the message that they've tried to do with the different careers. Actually, Margot Robbie, in a recent interview for the Barbie movie, said that she would not be willing to, she would not have done the movie if they didn't make there be multiple Barbies and also have a diversity of careers and diversity of
the cast,
of like demographic and ethnic backgrounds, because she said that Barbie Land is supposed to represent perfection, right? Like everything's Barbie, it's perfect. She always has the perfect feet. She always has the perfect, you know, land. She has the perfect house, etc. It's in Malibu. And she was like, if we tell a story of a perfect land and it is only white people, then that's is not an acceptable image.
Yeah.
So she said that she was unwilling to do the movie unless they had a diversity amongst all the Barbies and all the Kens. And I think that actually adds to the plot.
I think so. Barbie's missteps, because it wouldn't be a fair video if we only talked about the good. So this is, which seems to be a common issue. And I watched a documentary last night about Mattel, which was called Tiny Shoulders, which I'll get into. And they're still to this day grappling with it. But this idea of body image. And so Barbie products had a history of sending an unhealthy message to women about their bodies. And so in 1965, they had a Sleepy Time Barbie, and she had a scale that was permanently at 110 pounds. Now,
that's insane.
Yes. And this was on Tablet Magazine. So the average weight of an American woman at the time was 140 pounds. And according to like trigger warning, eating disorders and that kind of stuff we're going to be talking about. So I would skip to the next slide if you're like triggered by that. But we have, so 1965, the scale was 110, and Barbie's measurements, give or take, are suspected to be about 5'7" or 5'6". But women who are 5'6", even at that time, only 1 in 100,000 were under 110. And if you go based off her measurements, she would be deemed as such an unhealthy underweight that she would be going through losing hair, stopping menstruation, which are all signs of anorexia.
Yeah, I remember that there was a big article in Moan about this, I think in like 2018, 2019, around that time. And it was them talking about how Barbie's dimensions are literally impossible. Like they aren't real. Like it's literally like she would have to not have specific organs to look the way she looks, because she's like perfectly skinny but also perfectly curvy,
right? And
that is not possible. So it was painting this image of, you know, an unattainable body standard.
And leading to that as well, in 1963 they had Babysit Barbie, and she had a few books. One of them said how to lose weight with the words "don't eat!" written on it.
That's
like, how did that
that's insane.
And I think it was, as someone who's had like people close to me dealing with eating disorders, I do also think that back then there just wasn't a lot of education around it and the dangers of it. And so I think that these messages were just like they were a larger reflection of the ignorance of the time.
Yeah, and again, it's like this period of time where women were accessories to men. So their job was to look perfect for when the man comes home and take care of the kids and be skinny and be hot and have a full face of makeup, even though you're just at home all day. Like, it's such a ridiculous standard. And I think you're right. It really does show the ignorance of the time.
Right. Yeah. And then another way in which they have had missteps, which is with disabilities and representation. So in 1997, they had a Share a Smile Becky doll, and it featured a doll in a wheelchair. At first, they were praised for the inclusion, but soon consumers realized that the doll did not fit through the doorways of the Barbie dream house, nor did it fit in the elevator, also didn't fit in the car. And this is from theworld.org. But I think the sentiment here was that it was a reminder of people who are not able-bodied, and especially if they have wheelchairs, like they're constantly reminded of ways in which they cannot participate, and this was just another reminder of that.
Yeah, and it shows too that, like, if you're going to do something for the sake of inclusivity, you need to do it correctly. Similarly with what you said about like the black Barbie having very Eurocentric features. Now there is a disabled Barbie who can't even use any of the accessories. It's like, being inclusive is a great thing, and you should be inclusive, but then you also need to be thinking about it from a macro perspective of, like, how is this going to look? How can they interact with the other things? How can they interact with the accessories? How do they look compared to the other Barbies, etc.? Because if not, it's offensive to people.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, maybe, I don't know if they did. I would never know, but, like, consult with people who are disabled. Like, ask them what they want, like, how.
Oh, yeah. I feel like that is such a common thing, too, where it's like, it's okay for you to be ignorant about something. Like, it's okay for you to not understand the black experience as a white woman and a white CEO. But then it's your job as that white woman and white CEO to go out and show this doll to BIPOC people or disabled people, whatever, you know, like whatever the representation for the doll is, and get their input or see or test it with children. Like, what do they like about it? What do they not like about it? Like, it not fitting in the car is something that I'm sure a child would have realized within 15 minutes of playing with it if they had actually tested that. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a lack of foresight, and that they, again, if you're going to do something, you need to do it correctly.
Point here, which is, like, of course, pushing the white standard, which was that Mattel was celebrated at first when they introduced the black doll Christy, but again, they realized that they were using the mold of the Barbie doll, which brought up the debate of, like, are they still pushing a white standard? And not making accommodating dolls. So, again, that was something we'd already touched on, but just to note, it seems to be a similar issue they have.
Right.
And then next slide, which I believe is Ruth Handler. This is the rabbit hole that I fell down that was so fascinating.
Okay.
Ruth Handler is the creator of Barbie. She's known as the mother of Barbie. Now, she was the daughter of Jewish immigrants who escaped persecution. Now, she was an advocate for women entering the workforce. That was the whole sentiment behind Barbie. And now this, again, is another fact of, like, someone can be great and progressive and also flawed, but then also turn that into something great. So something about Ruth Handler was that, and this is according to Tablet Magazine, but in the 1970s, she was criminally indicted for lying about Mattel's sales to increase their stock. And she had to serve 5 years of probation, among other criminal punishments. However, from that, she created the foundation called Foundation of the People, and it was a program that helped people on probation re-enter the workforce.
Okay, I have two thoughts about this.
A lot to unpack.
I have two thoughts about this. The first is, it is absurd to me how much less punished white-collar crime is than, like, any other crime. Like, if you were to walk into a grocery store and, like, steal money, you would go to jail.
Yeah.
But if you falsify corporate records of a massive corporation where you're taking money from multiple shareholders, multiple investors, like, then it's just 5 years probation. You know, like, it's so ridiculous, and it's another example of America catering to the rich. Yeah. And it's really, really frustrating to see that. Yeah. But again, like what you said, it's another example of, like, a good thing and bad thing can happen at the same time. Because this, to me, shows that she truly is passionate about women entering the workforce. Like, even after probation, starting a foundation to help people re-enter the workforce. Like, I think you can tell that passion and that influence on Barbie was very genuine. Like,
and that you bring up a good point that I didn't even think about, which is like she recognized maybe there were two similarities here where women struggled to enter the workforce. So she was able to identify there was another demographic which was struggling, which is like people on probation and trying to get back on their feet. So I thought that was really fascinating that, like, again, people are multifaceted. Now, she had a second wind as well to her career. So she did have to step down from Mattel after this.
Wow.
And so then she created a second successful company later in life called Nearly Me. This was after getting a mastectomy, and she noticed there was a gap in the market for like comfortable, believable breastplates that women could wear to feel like beautiful again if they felt like that was something that they needed after a mastectomy. And then she was really seen as progressive for talking about early detection of breast cancer in the 1970s when the topic was really taboo.
Yeah, and cancer was so much less researched than it is like now.
Women focused cancer.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And she even went on a talk show and like had a bit where she let one of the hosts like kind of like feel her up, and it was this thing where like she knew it'd be controversial, but it got attention for this company,
right?
To like so women could find these breastplates. So I thought that was really interesting. And then so that was a little bit about Ruth. I only touched the surface, but then next slide, which we will be talking about Barbie's resurgence in the zeitgeist. So in 2018, there was a documentary called Tiny Shoulders, which I watched last night. It's about Barbie's polarizing past, and it really followed employees at Mattel who were really, really trying to like push Mattel and Barbie forward, specifically because at the time, I didn't realize, but Mattel and Barbie was like losing so much money. They were bleeding money. They couldn't turn a profit.
Yeah.
In 2018, like they thought they were going to have to close their doors.
Wow. I mean, I really think that the 2010s was like kind of the awakening for a lot of people of corporate responsibility.
It was so interesting seeing like the logistics behind this, because in the documentary there was specifically one part where they were trying to make a more size inclusive Barbie, and they wanted Barbie to not have a thigh gap.
Okay.
Because that's like unrealistic. But they were manufacturing the prototype, and they were talking about like how difficult it was when you have a doll that doesn't have a thigh gap to just even maneuver putting clothes on. So like they were trying to find a solution where sometimes the misstep that they have about body image in this case maybe isn't always rooted in like malice, but practicality, that they were trying to create a doll, but like it had to have a thigh gap to like pull the clothes. Right. There was also another scene in the Tiny Shoulders documentary where they're in a boardroom. I thought it was really interesting where they were talking about how they had a problem with they came out with a line of Barbies a few years prior to them filming, and they were all different ethnicities and colors and hairstyles. But it was still the same like skinny Barbie. And they said that it really stung because one columnist said something along the lines of like, now you can be body shamed in all skin colors. And that really stuck with them. Yeah. I thought that was interesting. And it was a good point. Like, and
it's true.
Yeah. And I also think it was so fascinating. This documentary is in 2018, and it was almost like in a way capturing what could have become the downfall of Barbie. I think that was where it was headed. And it just shows you how much the pendulum swings, because now the doll could show up to your house and light it on fire and she would still be beloved. No one cares.
Literally, Barbie is on everything.
She's everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, there's also just been a pop culture resurgence. So even before the hype around the 2023 movie, you had celebrities like Kylie Jenner dressing for her for Halloween. And then the search term, I think this is more coinciding with the movie, the search term Barbiecore has been spiking on many search engines. I looked it up on Pinterest last night, and it's times 100. You can't even like see the exact number because it's so high. And then on TikTok, the word Barbiecore has 17 million views and counting.
Oh yeah. And I mean, also the movie hasn't even come out yet.
I know.
It's going to be way...
I have been saying they are not marketing a movie. They're marketing like an experience. They're
marketing a cultural phenomenon.
Exactly.
Truly.
They caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. And also I think too, we're going to see it have this cascading effect in ways we don't see yet.
Yeah. Oh yeah, brand. Okay, this will be a fun one. Really.
Okay.
So the branding magic. I'm sure you have your own theories on like why.
I have many.
So good at being branded, but I have two specific theories on what makes Barbie's branding so magical. Number one, it's timeless. It's withstood the test of trends and times. And I always say, for me, as someone who's been given the title of trend forecaster, I get paid to talk about trends. I have a podcast. My number one advice, it's ironic, but is like, don't follow trends. Like That's how you become trendy, is you do not follow trends. And so I think that Barbie has really like stuck to like a certain style and look, and it's become intergenerational. Even though even like the movie or the toys are geared at children, it's enjoyed by all ages. And the idea that there's a Barbie doll that fits different careers, life stages, aesthetics, it ensures that the brand will evolve with each individual consumer.
Yeah.
So you could be college Barbie, and then when you become a dentist, you can also be dentist Barbie.
Right. There's something you said really interesting too, when talking about trends. I always kind of like to think of trends as like a wheel. And the wheel is always moving forward in this cyclical movement. But the second a trend is on top,
it's going to go down.
It's going to go down. So what you're trying to do is not look for what's at the top and what's at the bottom. Is you want to look for like what's right here.
Yeah.
What's moving forward.
I think we're seeing something similar happen with this wheel of like Barbie core is on top, and then you just had Wednesday Addams, gothic, dark, and like they're two opposite ends of the spectrum, and yet those things can trend at the same time.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's going to be a year of pink, but if Wednesday season 2 comes out next year, the wheel will continue to move forward.
And like, don't pay attention to trends; just focus on yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really important to look at trends from the sense of like, what is what is mass popular opinion right now?
Yes.
What do people like? What do people not like? But it's important to look at that from like, okay, if this is what people like now, what will they like next?
Yeah.
Not like, how do we run and try and catch up to this thing that we can't catch up to?
You're always going to be
because the wheel's always moving.
Yeah. You can't run as fast as like an automated wheel.
Right. Yeah.
And then another thing that I think makes the branding of Barbie so great is, and I think it's especially going to become even bigger in the world of digital media, which is Barbie is tangible. And so what do I mean by that? It's that Barbie was able to create products surrounding the doll that felt tangible yet dreamy. And so it, to me, creates the illusion, like the dream house, that Barbie continues to have her own life and world even when you're not physically playing with the doll.
Yeah, and I think that's actually what the movie's going to try and showcase a lot is Barbie Land.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing they talk about. There's also all of these there's President Barbie.
Yeah.
There's, Margot's Barbie. There's all these Kens and all that. I think it's really, really supposed to show how multifaceted Barbie is, as opposed to just like this linear narrative of like, a doll that sits in a box.
Yeah. I think that there's this like relationship that people form with Barbie when they feel like she's her own person in a dream house. She's in a car. Like, she is not in a weird way like dependent on you. Like, there's just this world that you create around her that then she exists in, whether you're playing with her or not.
Exactly.
Now, we were talking about this kind of off camera, and then I think you made a TikTok. I would love to just really quickly hear your thoughts on color theory.
Genius marketing is tying yourself to a color. Barbie has done it with pink, but also it's a really, really common thing you see with music artists, actually. So like Taylor Swift has done it with red. She had a red tour. She has the red lipstick. Like, if you look at the backup dancers from that tour, they're all in red. If you look at the audience from that tour, they're all in red. Olivia Rodrigo was starting to do it with this purple color. And I think that tying yourself to a color is like, colors manifest themselves in the real world every day. Red lipstick is such a great example. Like, red lipstick has existed long before Taylor Swift. But by tying herself to this color red, people now identify this red lipstick with Taylor Swift. So then every time they're wearing red lipstick, it's like they get to wear a piece of Taylor. Even though she didn't invent red lipstick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's by associating yourself with a color, then people can go and see that color in the real world and associate it with you. which is a really, really powerful thing.
Yeah, that's so true, that like having a specific color that people look to is such a powerful branding move that I think a lot of people don't talk about in the industry, but it's definitely a strategy. Like there's a reason that Olivia Rodrigo's new solo cover is black and white and she has a purple Band-Aid on.
Right.
That's not a mistake.
It's not it's very intentional. It's very intentional. Also, I was literally even noticing like she released a vinyl. What color is the vinyl? It's purple.
Yeah.
Like that's smart.
Yeah.
And also too with Barbie specifically in the pink, like the reason that there are so many Barbie collaboration products is because it's so easy to do.
Yeah.
Like Ruggable made a rug. It's just a pink rug.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I'm probably pretty sure they had already manufactured a pink rug before. Then the Barbie movie came out and they're like, oh, easy branding opportunity. Let's pay a little bit of money to call this the Barbie rug.
Yeah.
And people will buy it.
And we're getting towards the end, but okay, so I just want to quickly touch on the movie.
Yeah.
So you had the set design, which actually it's in London where they built the actual house. And they built a real Barbie dream house, which there was an article about it on Architectural Digest, and it was so fascinating. Greta Gerwig, the director, said they were very intentional about not just using green screen and CGI. Like they wanted to build a actual house because she remembered when she played with the Barbies, they were something you could hold. They were tangible. And she felt like she'd be betraying Barbie and her experience with Barbie if she just put Margot Robbie in a green screen.
Right. And I think also it really sells like the magic of Barbie because a lot of the Barbie houses and stuff were like both impossible and impractical. Like, why does somebody need a slide from their bedroom to a pool?
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to go in your pajamas, like, go down to the pool. You know what I mean? But it's a really fun idea.
Only in that world would.
And I think that the magic in the movie wouldn't have been reflected fully if it wasn't a real slide into a pool, you know?
And one thing that was really fascinating from the Architectural Digest article was when they built Barbie World and the specific dream house, they made the ceilings oddly low in the rooms so that the actors look disproportionate, which is what Barbie looks like in the dream house. So they wanted the ceilings to be low to create that same illusion that you see when you're holding the doll.
That's a really good optical illusion. I'm also, a weird detail, I'm curious, why did they build it in London? Like, it's supposed to be Malibu. It's supposed to be very beachy.
Probably because it just costs so much money to like.
Well, I'm not build it in Florida or build it in like, Georgia or something, you know. But like London's cold.
I know.
Like, I'm very curious as to why they did it there.
Well, it could have been like a warehouse. I'm not sure, but I know they're filming like Wicked in London. I think they're filming a couple movies now in London. But also they told Architectural Digest that they used so much pink paint creating the set that there was an international shortage.
I saw this article. I think that's so iconic.
Imagine like going to just make like a nursery and you want to make it pink because you find out you're having a girl and then you like can't find the paint anywhere.
It's on the Barbie movie.
Yeah, exactly. And then they just didn't want to like use even that mountain that you see on the frame was hand painted by an artist. It's not like a printed out backdrop. It's hand painted.
Wow.
So there's a really great video too where Margot Robbie on Architectural Digest gives a tour. So that was really fascinating. And then of course just the cast. You have Margot Robbie as Barbie, Ryan Gosling as Ken, a very large and diverse cast as well. But they've been really, really tight-lipped about the plot. Really tight-lipped.
Would like to talk about that because I was actually thinking about this the other day. It's most movie trailers, the point is to show you what the movie's about, so you want to see the movie.
Yeah.
The marketing of the Barbie movie has been like, we're going to show you pieces of what it is, but we're not telling you what it's about so that you want to see it. And instead, the things that they show are very rooted in nostalgia.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they kept dropping these little Easter eggs. Like, there would just be, like, a billboard when she's driving, and it would be, like, a billboard of an old Barbie car.
Yeah.
And, like, someone would tweet, like, oh, my God, that's actually the 1963 Barbie movie, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was, like, they were making the trailers about Easter eggs, not about plot.
You're right.
So that people would talk about the Easter eggs to get theories about the plot,
right?
But no one ever actually knew, which was what constantly kept it a topic of cultural conversation.
Yeah, which I was making a video on America Ferrera, who's in the movie. She's a human, not a Barbie. And I was doing so much Googling trying to figure out what her character was, and you cannot find out what her character is going to be. My theory is that she's a journalist who finds Barbie and then is trying to learn about her and figure her out and is shocked she's in the real world. And then Margot Robbie was wearing pink during all the press and then wore black to the premiere. America Ferrera was wearing black and white during all the press and then wore pink. I think that in the movie...
That's intentional.
I think in the movie they switch. I think that, like, what if Margot switches with America and is like, I
never
even
world. Considered the possibility of a human going to Barbie Land in the movie.
I mean, that's just my own, like, that's my own theory. I could be wrong, but that's I feel like there's something going to happen where Margot and America switch.
Yeah, or at very least, I think that's very intentional symbolism on the red carpet to show that they're going to be opposite sides of the same coin in the movie.
Yes.
Like, something about their characters will be connected, but in a way that they're opposites.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And then next slide, we just have to talk about before we're done, which is what I think Mattel is building what Marvel has, which is a Mattel cinematic universe. Now, Insider put out an article recently where Mattel is in the works to make 17 movies about their toys. A couple of them. Okay. And we could do a whole deep dive on like our specific theories, but a couple of the movies, I'll run through them really quick and then we can talk about it. They're making an A24 style film about Barney that's geared at adults.
Okay.
Which is going to be interesting.
And you said it's like a horror movie, right?
I think
like,
so.
It's like,
psychological.
Like dark.
And the person producing it is Daniel Kaluuya. He was the guy in Get Out.
That's crazy.
So I think it's going to be Get Out-esque.
Okay.
Polly Pocket is going to be Lily Collins from Emily in Paris, directed by Lena
I'm
Dunham.
so excited for Polly Pocket.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. And again, my favorite thing about Polly Pocket compared to Barbie is that Barbie is always solo, but Polly Pockets were always in groups.
Yeah.
So I think it will be really, really cool for it to be like a story about girls.
Yeah,
like, girl,
I think so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if the girls are doing something, the girls, and I like that. Like,
and
that
it would,
fun.
yeah. And I had a comment on TikTok that was like, if they do a Polly Pocket movie, there has to be a scene where she tries to eat the clothes. And I was like, that's such a good point. Like, trying to, and then another one is American Girl Doll, which I thought that they were competitors, but like, I guess they're also Mattel. But that one's really hush-lipped. They aren't saying a lot about what that could be.
Yeah, it's also like, I don't know how to make a plot for an American Girl Doll movie that isn't kind of similar to a Barbie movie.
Yeah, and I feel like American Girl Doll is obviously iconic in its own way, but like Barbie, you have that hot pink like color theory, but for me, American Girl Dolls, I don't know what the branding. Like,
and I think, again, like American Girl Dolls, a lot of them were rooted in motherhood, right? Like they were always supposed to be kind of like babies or younger
girls that you take care of.
Yeah.
Now, another one is Hot Wheels, which is being directed by J.J. Abrams, the guy behind like Star Wars. He's huge.
Okay.
So he's doing, they called it a gritty movie about Hot Wheels.
Interesting. It's also, Hot Wheels is interesting to me too, because there's actually never people involved with Hot Wheels. Like the Hot Wheels toys are just cars. So it's like all of the characters of the film are going to have to be completely made up. Like,
right.
No,
is it just
I don't
like
think
Fast
there's
and
any.
Furious?
Yeah. But, we need Vin Diesel in the movie.
Oh my God.
It would be so funny. It would be so funny.
He probably couldn't like break his Marvel contract.
Yeah.
But that would be interesting. And then another one which I'm excited about is the Magic 8 Ball, and it's going to be a horror film.
Yeah, I love the idea of a murderous Magic 8 Ball.
I know.
I love that idea. That's so interesting because also it's kind of like a spin-off Ouija boards to me.
Yes, I think so. Or like I think it could be like Final Destination where it like if it answers a certain question a certain way, then like no matter what you do, like you're next.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah, like if a certain thing comes up,
trying to avoid it. But or maybe it's like something about the Magic 8 Ball is like magical, so then they also try to get it to like
do other things.
So like undo the negative. Like, am I gonna die tomorrow?
Yeah.
If they shake it, it says yes. So then they're like, am I gonna live past Tuesday? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they keep trying to use it to undo the bad things it's causing, but that keeps making more bad things happen.
Yeah. Another one is Uno, and they're doing a heist style movie with Lil Yachty, and it's in Atlanta. If you told me they were making a heist style movie with Uno,
Tin
Lil
Hat
Yachty
Theory, it's giving me like, have you seen like Ocean's 11 or like Ocean's 13?
Right?
I would love that. Except for some reason, it's like a high stakes Uno's game.
Yes.
Or there's a James Bond movie called Casino Royale where it's like he has to play poker at the end.
Oh my God.
To win the money. What if they play Uno?
Yes.
What if they play Uno?
You know what's interesting about all these so far is that it seems are geared towards adults. And so I think that like Mattel is realizing that the market isn't always in children, but in capturing your former adult
nostalgia
fans.
marketing is literally one of the most powerful tools in all of marketing. This is why Disney is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, right? Disney, think all the princesses, right? Like I went to see The Little Mermaid and I'm 24, you know, because I saw it as a child. Or Marvel is the biggest one.
Yeah.
My dad took me to see Iron Man 1 because he read Iron Man comic books. It was his favorite comic book character. And then 20 years later, like I love Marvel. You know what I mean? It plants the seed, and they're really, really good at balancing plots in a way where it's like it can be funny to a child and funny to an adult. It's a very hard thing to do. Also, SpongeBob does this really well, and I want to do a deep dive on SpongeBob
like
one day.
Innuendos.
But it makes it because it's so hard to market to like 8-year-olds and 4-year-olds at the same time, which is why they use these very, very specific franchises to play on nostalgia. Also, like just think of the shows they release, like High School Musical got a reboot. You know what I mean? Like they're very, very intentional with using nostalgia to target a new young customer base, but also targeting the parents of those young customers to get them into the door to buy the ticket to the movie theater.
Totally. It's such a great way to, the nostalgia is doing the marketing for you. You don't have to convince them to be interested. And then 2 more is Thomas the Tank Engine.
I was sickly obsessed with this time. Girl.
What?
I had the like carpet. There's like a little carpet you could do as trains. I had the tracks, so many of them. There used to be this toy store by my house called Zany Brainy. Don't know why, just a random. Shout out Zany Brainy. In Virginia. And they would have these like, I guess the employees would make these like really elaborate like Thomas the Tank Engine sets, and you could like play with them in the store. I would cry, sob, kick and scream like, Mom, I want that. Like I was sickly obsessed, and now I gave all those toys to my baby cousins, and they play with them. Yeah, it's so really cute.
Like, they're living on. That is so. I did not know that about you. That is so funny.
It's a dark part of my life.
And then the last one is Chatty Cathy, which is going to be like oddly produced by Jason Bateman, the guy from Ozark.
Okay. I honestly couldn't tell you what a Chatty Cathy is.
Yeah, no, it was like it came out around the same time as Barbie, and it was just this doll where I believe you like pulled a string or something and she talked at you. So that's I feel like creepy.
That is exactly what I was gonna say too. It's giving creepy vibes. Anything with a doll is so easy to just make creepy.
Exactly.
What if American Girl doll was also a creepy movie? But I feel like they can't, because that would ruin the franchise. Like they need to sell the American Girl dolls. I think that there is a feeling of like protection that they have over American Girl doll that they don't have over like Barney, which I'm excited for Barney. The comics. Well, Barney they can do because Barney is already like ruined. Like,
I know, right?
The guy who was Barney was, not a good person. So I think that they don't have a problem with like soiling that idea.
Yeah. And then last slide, which is just about the lesson, and if you guys like want to comment down below kind of what lessons you took away, or if you feel like there's anything that we missed as well, if you're on YouTube. But what I took away from this is that 2 things can exist at once. You can love a brand while also being critical of them and wanting them to do better, and the same goes for people. Like Ruth Handler had her flaws. She was criminally indicted, but she often turned it around for something better. And that also products and media hold such huge influence over the cultural zeitgeist. And the bigger the brand, the bigger the influence. I think that oftentimes we feel like media is just a luxury. But I think now media is a utility. Like media is a way that people figure out what's going on. And like with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. And I also think too, so many people are like, oh, like it's just a movie, it's just fiction, or it's just TV, whatever. And they don't realize how impressionable children are and how important those formative years are, and why it is important for brands to be inclusive from a variety of perspectives, or to, portray an image of like feminism and independence and stuff like that. Like it really is very important for people of that age.
Yeah. And I think as a brand, like not necessarily complaining about it, but recognizing that like it's a good problem to have, that if you get to a point where you are so influential that people are holding you accountable, like that's a good problem to have.
And with great power
comes great. And not a lot of brands get to that point where they actually matter.
I think it's important to acknowledge that
yeah.
too, that like, because you are a brand, you now of that size and that caliber, you now have a responsibility to use some of that power for good.
Yeah. And the last point, which I want you to kind of dive into, but essentially, which is like, I think the biggest lesson for me is like going against the grain. Ruth went against what was popular despite harsh critiques. And because of that, she has one of the biggest brands in the world. But there was a comment that someone left on one of your TikToks, and we've been talking about it since, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the comment they left was, the counterculture of today becomes the culture of tomorrow.
Oh, that's
and
so
I
good.
loved that line. And I think it's true, because you can't really stop the evolution of culture.
Yeah.
You cannot. It is not up to you. And resenting it or trying to put it off or procrastinate it or not listen to it will only hurt you. It will only hurt you because it's inevitable. So, and media, you've said this before, media swings like a pendulum, or that wheel metaphor we used earlier. Like, what is popular today will not be popular, or what is not popular today will be popular tomorrow. Like, I don't know, think of skinny jeans, you know what I mean? Like, all of the 2010s, they were everything, and now I would projectile vomit if I ever had to put on a pair of skinny jeans again. Yeah, like,
I love them. But yeah.
But, and I think that's just an example too of like how things always swing. And if you deny it, you will get left in the dust.
Yeah. And do you feel like there's any examples of counterculture becoming culture?
Yeah, a lot. I think one of the ones that I saw most recently was Threads. I think that we saw a world where everyone is obsessed with short form media. TikTok blew up. Then Instagram's like, we got to copy it. Then YouTube's like, well, no, we got to copy it. But then TikTok's like, well, we're going to make it 10 minutes to be more like YouTube. And it's like, when everyone was fighting over short form video, what was the fastest platform to gain 100 million users in 5 days? The fastest app to ever do that in history. Threads, a text app. And it's because Twitter had this resentment towards it, and it had this negativity problem that you've talked about, and Elon Musk has already perpetuated. So Instagram saw a hole in the market, and they're like, nobody is doing this thing. This is the counterculture of today, and by doing this, we can make it the culture of tomorrow. And they did that to 100 million people in 5 days. Like, that is honestly, to me, been the biggest case study of this year for why it is so important to look at what's not popular and why it's not popular, because sometimes it's a very solvable problem. And if you as a brand solve that problem, you will take the counterculture of today and turn it into the culture of tomorrow.
You made so many good points. I want to just like end on that. Like, I can't even add to that. It's just that
mic drop.
Yeah. No, we'll end on that. That was really good. But thank you guys for watching.
Thank you for watching our first video.
This is on YouTube. It'll also be on wherever you find your favorite podcast. So
that's right.
However you prefer to listen. But if you are listening to this on podcast and you want to see the visual slides that we've created each week, like we're spending hours making presentations, you can do that on YouTube, and that's where you can like leave comments and stuff. But if you guys are listening on podcasting, if you guys give us a rating, it helps us so much in like just growing this and being able to make it our full-time gig.
Yeah, it's really the dream that we have been chasing, and we're really excited to do it. So.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this video, you were part of our first
the OGs.
Yeah, the OGs. So thanks guys. Yay.